Hi everyone, welcome back to This Book Belongs to Pam and Happy New Year! Let's talk about all the books that I read in the last 2 months of 2024. So, this is the first sit down video that I'm filming since the Bookmas videos that I filmed last December. I didn't get to finish it yet again, third year in a row, but I'm really happy actually about a lot of the videos that I filmed for Bookmas, so I'm still proud of it. But I wanted to make sure that I round out the end of the year. So I do have two videos that still talks about 2024. So today we're going to be talking about all the books that I read in November and December. And then in the next video, we're going to talk about my best and worst books of 2024, as well as my 2024 book stat. Those are videos that you can look forward to watching if you are curious. But first, let's talk about November and December. Here's all the books that I read in the month of November. I read a total of 8 books, and that's around 2,875 pages. And then in December, I read a total of 11 books, and that's 2,181 pages. We are just going to be talking about the books. I'll just go through my list. I have it here in my computer. So if I'm looking here, it's because my notes are in here. We're starting strong with We Used to Live Here by Marcus Cleaver. I really enjoyed this book. I gave this 5 stars. And there's honestly no way to talk about this book without spoiling it. The synopsis of the book happens on the very first chapter, very first page even of the book. But briefly, if you haven't heard of this book, we are following this queer couple. They just bought a house. They're house flippers. Very old fixer-upper, and what they usually do is that they fix it and then they sell it. So usually they stay in their project home. One wintry night, a family knocks on the door and says, "Hey, we used to live here. Can we take a look at what the house looks like now?" And that kind of starts this series of strange and quite frankly scary events that happen throughout the rest of the book. This book does such a great job at really immersing you into the scene. I am still thinking about that attic scene. As anyone who've read this book, that attic scene is kind of burned in my brain, and I don't want it there. The book also has some mixed media elements with like chat rooms and newspaper clippings and interviews, and there's a lot of like hidden clues spread throughout the book that really get you in the mindset of,
am I reading this book right? Why is this not making sense? Why is this making so much sense? I have so many conspiracy theories about what's going on.
and honestly the true plot of the book was slippery all throughout, and I think it definitely did a great job at like gaslighting me. It's odd to say that that made it for a fun reading experience, but I was really engaged with the text to the point that I was googling a bunch of the references mentioned, because I believe this book was written or posted in Reddit prior to it being published. So there's like a bunch of like Reddit threads on it already, and I was really in it. So yeah, I really enjoyed this book. Gave it 5 stars. You're probably gonna see it in my best books of the year in the next video. Yeah, that's We Used to Live Here by Marcus Cleaver. The next book that I read is Huay City by Claire Betita de Guzman. So I was part of the book tour for this book, which I'm very grateful for. It was my first ever book tour. So I did already post my full review of this book in the Instagram reels that I post. So I'm gonna link that down below as well. But very briefly, Huay City is a character study of 3 people as they navigate feeling left behind in life. We have Carmen, Marina, and Hai. They're all in different walks of life, and they all have different goals that they want to achieve, and somehow they kind of all converge in Hue City, Vietnam, and their paths cross in the most unexpected ways. This book is kind of a montage of events. It feels like we are looking at different points in time in our characters' lives and kind of seeing how things are parallel, how things might be connected to each other. And I think the best part of this book was the author's sense of description. She's really good at writing in such a way that I can visualize. The scene was so clear in my mind, the nuances of the scene, and like the very visceral way that she describes things is something that I really enjoyed throughout the book. And I just really appreciated how the characters in this book kind of approach their situation of being left behind quite uniquely. I gave this book 3.25 stars. So that's Way City by Claire Petita de Guzman. And then I read The Unmothers by Leslie J. Anderson. This book is hands down one of the weirdest books that I've read last year. It involves this sensational headline on a newspaper saying that a horse gave birth to a human. Like, how do you even deal with that kind of headline? So the story begins with our main character. She's a reporter, so she got sent to this small town to investigate this ridiculous headline. And just a bunch of crazy things happen. And I'll leave it at that. I think it's best that you go into this just knowing that and kind of feeling your way through the story. This book was a little bit of a drag, honestly, like the writing style, and there's not a lot of big things happening, just a bunch of like small events here and there, small interactions here and there as the story progresses. But what I did love about this book is how it focused on the small town dynamic, like how small towns essentially function. People knowing everybody, people have specific notions of what it's like if someone comes from a city. So things like that. And I feel like it was really explored, as well as I guess, the herd mentality or like the group mentality that is kind of prevalent in small town settings where it veers towards this cultish behavior. I feel like that was really explored well in this book. And yeah, I gave this one 3 stars. It was eerie, it was unsettling. I was really curious about where this book was going. Yeah. That's The Unmothers by Leslie J. Anderson. And then I also read Open Water by Caleb Azuma Nelson. This is not my first go at this book. I did try to read this. I forget when I started reading this, but I did DNF'd it. I think it was really tough for me the first time around because this book is written in second person. It uses you a lot. Like, you went to the store and got me some of my favorite treats. You look stunning, blah, 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 blah. So it was a lot of that, and sometimes it would take me out of the story a little bit, and I would get confused about what we're talking about and who's who. And I think that's why I put it down the first time. I think I got to like a decent amount, like 75 or 80 pages when I first read it. I did pick it up again in November because it is part of my 12 Recs by 12 friends. So this was recommended to me by JanAgaton, and I know that she loves this book, and I think I was more prepared for the second person. I really did enjoy it, and I didn't really cry, but I felt heartbroken by this book, especially towards the end. Like, the things that happened at the end of the book just really made me sad. I gave this book 4.5 stars. I still deducted some stars because the second person is just really hard. This one has a lot of literary style of writing, which is a bit difficult when you compound it with the second person. But I still really did enjoy it. I don't think I've even told you what this book is about. In this book, we're kind of following these 2 characters who are kind of weaving in and out of each other's lives, and they have this relationship that they understand each other so much, but they can't seem to make a proper relationship work for many different reasons. And layer that with the complexity of the lives of a black person, because they're both black and they're living in a world that makes everything harder for them. So that affects their experiences, affects how they view things, how they view the world, and how they view relationships. And I like how that's interwoven into the story of their life. I think I didn't do a great job at recapping that, but I do think you should give it a try. It's a short book and it's very beautifully written. It's just that the second person is tough. It's really tough, for me at least. If you enjoy second person, then go all in because this is a really great book. That is Open Water by Caleb Azuma Nelson. For this next book, I was actually doing this video project of reading Junji Ito for the first time, which I was supposed to post in October, but I didn't, obviously. And I still want to do that, so I'm kind of torn about, saying too much about the next book that I read, which is Frankenstein by Junji Ito. I still want to continue that video project, so I'm gonna be very broad a little bit here, but I think it's still valuable because then you'll see my reactions and stuff to that book that I read. I gave this one 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. I love the retelling of Frankenstein, which is the bulk of this book. It's kind of a bunch of short stories, but the first half of it is just the Frankenstein retelling. And I really enjoyed that. I haven't really read Frankenstein, um, but I have like a broad knowledge of what happens in there. So I don't know how accurate this retelling is. But yeah, I really enjoyed that. I love the art style. And I thought this art style was quite different, at least for Frankenstein. I thought the art style was quite different from the other works of Junji Ito that I've read at that point. 5 stars to Frankenstein by Junji Ito. I was really on a roll here because the next book that I read is also a 5-star read, and that is The Heart's Invisible Furies by John Boyne. I read this because it's on my 12 Recs by 12 Friends. I am forgetting who recommended this to me. I'll put the username on the screen because this was recommended through Instagram. But I really love this book. This is a historical fiction novel set in Ireland. So it follows the life of this boy who is born under very tragic circumstances and is placed in a family that is very strange, to say the least, and has a very, unnatural, I would say, upbringing. And it just follows his life. That's it. But I guess the context is at this point in time in Ireland, there is a very intense homophobia from top down, like from the government, from religion, from everyone. Like being gay in this country at that time is essentially a death sentence. And it's also set in a time where religion is the dominating voice in the country. What the Catholic Church says goes. There's no like separation of church and state, that does not exist. Just the exploration of that was it was just so sad, honestly. Like this book made me cry quite a bit, and I was not expecting it. This was the book that made me realize that I really enjoyed reading historical fiction where we're just following a person throughout their lives. I remember I enjoyed Pachinko a lot, and we followed it's like a family saga where we followed multiple people in the family. And this one, while we're only following I guess one or two people in the family, I really enjoyed it, and I think I'm gonna be on the hunt for more books like this where it just goes through the life of a person. I think I realized that I really enjoy learning about history, and I really enjoy learning about these small pockets of history. This is the book that made me realize that I enjoy historical fiction. That's The Heart's Invisible Furies by John Boyne. Highly recommended. 5 stars. The next book that I'm going to talk about is a book that I didn't think I would like, and it's Winter's Orbit by Everina Maxwell. This is also part of my 12 Recs 12 Friends challenge. It was recommended by this person. I'm forgetting. I'm so sorry. But I gave this one 4 stars, which is so unexpected because this is essentially space fantasy romance. And I typically don't like anything set in space. Like, I don't really enjoy movies set in space. I never find myself thinking, oh, I want to read a space opera or I want to watch a space movie. Never. I'm not the type of person who's interested in figuring out what's out there. Like, I have more than enough problems for what's already within planet Earth to even think about the space. That's why I didn't think I would enjoy this book. This is a queer fantasy romance. We are following this couple who had to get married for political purposes. So it's kind of a forced proximity in that sense, like a forced marriage, I would say. And they're just figuring out how to coexist in this world because they come from two different, I guess, governments where one is on top of the other, like one is the governing body for the other society, group of people, government, I forget what it's called. And then there's this mystery plot that's threaded throughout the story because something happens, like something unusual happens, and they try to get to the bottom of it. And I really enjoyed it. Did not expect to enjoy a space book this much. The characters were all lovely, and I was really incredibly invested in their stories. The world is, I would say, a bit tricky to get into at first. It was kind of confusing. Bear in mind that I don't read a lot of spacey things, so maybe if you're super into space stuff, it would be easy for you. But it was confusing a bit for me, but it does get better as you keep reading it. It's the type of writing style where they don't really tell you what things are. You're kind of expected to sort of pick up from context clues how things work, like how the world works, which I actually enjoy a lot. It's just the fact that it's space. That's kind of made it difficult for me. But I did enjoy the focus on the romantic relationship a lot. Maybe that's why I like this, because the focus is not on the fact that they're in space and all of the spacey things. The romantic relationship and the clear political plot that is happening at the same time. But I enjoyed that even though there's this overarching political plot, the relationship was still developed really, really well. So yeah, really enjoyed this one. 4 stars for Winter's Orbit by Everina Maxwell. And then I kind of started my series of Christmas romance books. For some reason, and I think this is true for a lot of people, the holiday season is just like a ripe time for romance stories. I don't know, maybe it's just the warm and fuzzy feelings that you get from rom-coms, and then couple that with the festive season. I am fully into it. I love the Christmas season. I love the holiday season. I don't live in a country with snow and stuff like that. It is hot all year round. So I kind of, live vicariously through all of the wintry, snowy books that I've been reading. I read quite a few of this winter Christmas romances, and some of them I did feature in my Bookmas video. So I'm gonna link my Bookmas 2024 playlist in the description box. But yes, let's talk about all of the Christmas romances that I read. So I read, or rather listened to, Two Can Play by Ali Hazelwood. This is an audiobook only book. And it's a novella where we're following this game developers, and they are forced to work with a rival company for this big game that they're developing. And they have to go into this retreat in this secluded mountain, whatever, snow cabin thing, in order to build rapport with each other, because they do have to work together. So they have to prove to the client that they can work together. So they do this team building thing in the cabin. But obviously, they get snowed in and things like that. So one of the developers in the company has a crush on the other developer in the other company, and she thinks that he kind of doesn't like her because he's very cold and whatever. And obviously they get to interact during this retreat thing, and I'll leave it at that. I was actually quite disappointed with this one. I gave this 2 stars. I don't think it was developed well. Like, I don't think anything was developed well in this book, honestly. Like, the romance, the characters. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I feel like I can give it a lower rating. Should I change my rating? I think I should. And I didn't enjoy it at all. The steamy scene was okay. It's the typical Ali Hazelwood style of spicy scenes, but it didn't have the usual way that Ali Hazelwood develops the romance. I enjoy how Ali Hazelwood does her romances, even though it uses a lot of like plot conveniences or even tropes. I don't mind that because that's what I expect of her. But this one just didn't have that. It was kind of lazy in my opinion, slightly sloppy, maybe even a cash grab. I don't know. So I'm actually gonna downgrade this to 1 star. Oops, sorry. The next book that I read is The 12 Dates of Christmas by Jenny Bayliss. I wanted to read this last year, but my hold didn't come through in time, so I made sure to read it this year, and maybe I shouldn't have. Maybe that was a sign from last year that I wouldn't really enjoy this book. In this book, we're following this woman. I forget their name already, but we're following her as she's trying to find the one. So she came from a long relationship, and then that kind of fizzled out, and then she has been single for the longest time, but now she wants to really find a partner. She signs up for this event called 12 Dates of Christmas, where you essentially go into 12 blind dates. This company will kind of mix and match you with different people depending on your interests and stuff like that. And then they'll set up the dates for you. Like, they have different activities per date. For example, they had like an afternoon tea party, they had a club, they had a hiking. So different events. So it sounds like a really fun time because you don't have to think about, where to go, whatever. You just show up, you have a date, and you get 12 of that. And then you can potentially find someone that you want to continue dating after the end of this 12 dates of Christmas. I read this for the festive Christmas vibes, and I think it definitely delivered on that front. It was very very heavily festive, Christmas, wintry. Like, obviously, when they went on dates, most of it is like Christmas coded because of the time that it's set in. All of the small town festive events like bake offs and sewing club and all of those shenanigans, they were really fun to read about. Quite literally, that is the only reason that this book isn't 1 star. I give it a 1.5 stars. The concept of 12 dates, it was fun. It was really fun, but each individual date was not. It started out okay. Like, usually what happens is that there's this date, and then something weird happens, or something funny, or something, whatever happens at the end, that she decides that I'm not gonna go on any more dates with this person. He's not the one. It was okay at first, but then it became repetitive because every single date was just being presented with this slightly ridiculous reason why she can't date this person. Like, it's the date would start out with her thinking, oh, maybe he's the one. And then by the end of the date, something happens. Like, this guy suddenly bursts out crying for an hour. And, oh, maybe I don't want him to be my boyfriend or something like that. If it was all out ridiculous, it would have been funny. But it was not. It was just slightly ridiculous. So it was boring. It was a chore to read. We did not need to go through all 12 dates. I feel like we got the concept in the first 4 dates even. I wish that page count was used instead to develop the actual relationship that's gonna be the end game, which I don't want to spoil. So I'm not like saying how that comes about, but I feel like we could have used that time to develop that instead of going through the entire 12 dates. Honestly, I would have given it a higher rating because it did give me the festive vibes, which is what I wanted from it. But how the love interest, how they both resolve their hang-ups is basically just to sweep everything under the rug and just make out. And quite frankly, I don't support that. So yeah, 1.5 stars for the 12 Dates of Christmas by Jenny Bayliss. You can definitely skip this one. And then this book redeemed the Christmas rom-coms for me. I read Snowed In by Catherine Walsh. I love this book so much. It's honestly the most perfect holiday romance read. It's fake dating, but it's not the absurd kind. There's like a good amount of festive vibes, a healthy dose of like the small town drama. And the only thing I will caveat is that there is a layer of somberness in this plot. But I actually really like that because I feel a lot more invested in our characters because of this part of the story. The story begins with our main character escaping her own wedding. Like, quite literally escaping her own wedding. She's like waiting by the elevator for this aunt of hers to like move away so she can ride the elevator before her bridesmaids notice that she's not in her bride preparation room. And then eventually she does escape. It's not a spoiler. And she lives her life. But then one day she has to go back to that small town where she was supposed to get married and spend time with her family for Christmas. It's kind of the catalyst for the whole story because while she was like hemming and hawing about what to do about the fact that she has to go back to that small town where everybody knows that she deserted her fiance, she meets up again with an old schoolmate of hers. They had this chance meeting at a bar and they get along nicely, and they decided that, okay, I actually also need to show up with a girlfriend so that my family don't think I'm alone and a failure. What if we, go home and show up as a couple? What do you think about that proposition? And yeah, I really, really enjoyed this one. If you enjoyed One Day in December by, is it Josie Silver, I want to say? Is that the right author? Yeah, if you enjoyed One Day in December by Josie Silver, I feel like you will enjoy this book. And I am keen to read more Catherine Walsh because this was really a fun time. So yeah, that is Snowed In by Catherine Walsh. And then I read the entire Under the Mistletoe short story collection. So this is a collection released by Amazon. So it's on KU. And it's a bunch of different romance authors writing Christmas rom-com short story. I started with Merry Ever After by Tessa Bailey. So for this rom-coms, I'm going to rate it on festive vibes, chemistry, and spice, because that is the pitch of this collection, that this is festive and it's spicy. But I also want to look at the chemistry, like how well are these authors going to build chemistry between the characters in such a short amount of pages. So the first book, Merry Ever After, I gave this 1.5 stars. We are following I guess she's an owner of a secondhand vintage clothing store, and she's also a seamstress. She makes clothes as well. And in comes this
Big, tall, humongous lumberjack kind of man, and he tries on pants and it rips in the middle because he's too big and nothing fits him.
So our main character, who's a single mother, offers to make a pair of jeans for him. And this starts their whole relationship, essentially. Festive vibes, honestly, 1/5. If I could have given it 0, I might have. Maybe because it's winter, so I guess there's that. But other than that, nothing really felt super festive about this. It is set over the Christmas period, but it's not festive at all, in my opinion. Chemistry, 1/5. It was just lust, honestly. They just wanted to bone each other. It's so cringy as well. The spice is, I guess, 4/5. I'm not saying that the spice is good. It's just that it's the most explicit out of all of the other short stories in this collection. And it has lines where I'm so big and humongous and tall that they don't make pants my size. They also don't make women my size. I'm like, get over yourself. Oh, it's kind of cringy, honestly. If you just wanted spice, like literally just spice, then maybe this is a short story for you. But it's also not recommended if you don't like babies, because there is a slight breeding kink. It has the annoying epilogue. For romance. But anyway, that's Mary Ever After by Tessa Bailey. And then I read All by My Elf by Olivia Dade. This one, we're following this like group of friends. They kind of sign up for this part-time job of riding this hot dog vehicle, like a van with a hot dog on top that's like dressed up for like a Christmas type of hot dog. They essentially are like elves, and they're driving around to sell this hot dog thing. Anyway, our main character has a crush on the guy that's in their friend group for the longest time, but she thinks that that guy is together with her best friend, so she's not saying anything. She's slightly annoyed by her best friend because she did tell her best friend that she has a crush on that guy, so she feels kind of betrayed. So that's where it starts, and then they get into a scenario where they had to stay in the van overnight. So for this one, festive vibes is middle of the road. It's 3/5. I think them being dressed as elves and being stuck in the snow and stuff like that kind of brought in the Christmas festive vibes. I really enjoyed their chemistry, so I gave that 4/5. I really like how they talk to each other and how wholesome everything is. The spice is also 3/5. It was pretty adorable, quite quirky. It's not spicy in the erotic kind of way. It mainly just has a spicy scene, but it's cute. If that makes any sense. So yeah, it was fun. This one, I gave this 3.5 stars. And then I read Merriment and Mayhem by Alexandra Belfleur. What is this book about? Wait, what is this about? How do I not like remember at all? Is this the fireman one? Yes, okay. So Merriment and Mayhem. So our main character, she moves into this house that used to be her grandmother's house. Her grandmother passed away, so she's kind of decorating the house for Christmas one last time before I think she's trying to sell it. So she's planning to spend Christmas at her grandmother's house one last time because her grandmother really loves the festive season, loves to do all of the Christmassy things. So she wanted to celebrate her grandmother that way. But while she was baking some sort of like cookies, she essentially burns down her kitchen. Fireman rushed to her place, saves her. I mean, it was pretty okay. Like the fire was out already. And there she meets this hot firefighter. And that is all that I'm gonna tell you. Festive vibes for this is middle of the road, 3/5. You do get all of she's trying to hang up lights and stuff like that. So there is a little bit of a festive vibe to it, but not too much. Chemistry, I actually really do like their chemistry. I feel like they had really good banter. They were both funny and they had witty remarks, and usually that makes for a good conversation, and I really enjoyed that. They're also quite unapologetic about how they talk to each other, which is really good because you really have to cut to the chase when it comes to the short story collections because you're only reading it for like 50, 60 pages. Spice was 3/5. I think this went for the more teasing kind of route. Like they were teasing each other as opposed to like straight on boning each other. It was cute, but I do think a lot of it was kind of abrupt. Normally, I don't mind lust at first sight, but love at first sight, where the ending of the book is like them being madly in love and obsessed with each other after 50 pages, which is just like less than a week usually in this kinds of books, it's not very believable for me. So I gave this one 2.75 stars. And then the next one I read is Only Santas in the Building. This one is by Alexis Daria. We're following a comic book illustrator. So she lives in this apartment complex or in this condominium building, and one day she finds an ornament, like a handmade ornament, hung on her doorknob, and she gets one every day. And she's always stressed because she's working on this comic book deadline, and then one day she gets an invite for a party at the penthouse. One of the residents is throwing a Christmas party, and they have to dress up as different kinds of Santas. In that party, she runs into one of the other residents in the building who she kind of has a massive crush on, but she feels like it's hopeless because the past few times that they've met each other, she thinks she looks so unkempt because she was so focused on her deadline. But they hit it off and things start from there. This one, the festive vibes, is 5/5. I really like the whole ornaments thing, dressing up as Santa, the party, the mistletoe. It has all of the festive vibes, so I really like that. The chemistry is about 3/5, middle of the road. I think there are some moments in there where chemistry was established. And then the spice is 3/5 as well. It was kind of cute. 3.75 for Only Santas in the Building by Alexis Daria. And then the last book in this short story collection is Cruel Winter with You by Ali Hazelwood again. So I did read 2 Ali Hazelwood books in December. The book starts with our female main character knocking at the door of a childhood friend because she needs to borrow this copper pan for this bread that they're making. But there's like a winter snowstorm outside, so her childhood friend asks her to come in, and then we find out that they actually have history together, but they weren't together. But they have history in a sense that guy has had some sort of crush on the girl for the longest time. The female love interest is also like a couple of years older than the guy. This book, I'm giving the festive vibes 2/5, chemistry 4, spice 2. I think this book veered more towards the angst agenda because that angst was strong with this one, which I love. I love angst in book, and it didn't really feel festive or holiday. It was just set in winter. There was just a snowstorm, which is why I gave the book a bit of a lower rating because I was expecting holiday festive feelings from this book because of the fact that it's in this collection. I really like the angst. I like how we got a lot of the history. Actually, well, this book is a bit longer than the other books, but we really got to know our characters and their history together, which I enjoyed. And that is always something that I like with angsty books. Like, I want to know why they have this angsty feelings. Like, what happened? Who hurt you? How did they hurt you? But yeah, I gave this one 3.5 stars. So that's Cruel Winter with You by Ali Hazelwood. That was the last holiday book that I read. And then I also read, as a palate cleanser, I suppose, Ipinanganak Akong Bakla at Ilan Pang Mga Akda by Gerald. So this tiny little chapbook is written by my friend GeraldTheBookworm on YouTube and on Instagram and TikTok. He wrote this collection of essays last year, and I got it during the Manila International Book Fair. I will leave a link to my vlog for that book fair. Like, it's really hard to talk about what this book is about because it's a collection of short essays. So I really think you should just go and dive into it. Although I don't know if this will be available online or anywhere else because it was kind of a limited print run during the book fair. My favorite was Ang Una Kong Regla and Unang Kabanata, which is a teaser to a horror novel that apparently Gerald is working on. So I'm very excited for that. But Ang Una Kong Regla was really interesting. I really love the storytelling and the very impactful ending. And I think it's like structured really well. So I enjoyed that one. It also like touches upon the concept of coming out as a gay person. All the works in this book definitely feels like it's been written from the heart. And it was really laced with the author's truest feelings and thoughts. It's an insight to the author's mind, and I appreciated that while I was reading it, I was left wanting, both in a good and bad way. Bad because some of the works feel like they needed more fleshing out, more like massaging to form a complete thought, but also good because I enjoyed reading each and every one of these books, and I would love to read a longer piece by the author. So yeah, that is Ipinanganak Akong Bakla at Ilan Pang Mga Akda by Gerald Gruezo. And now, to end this wrap up, I felt like it was fitting to talk about the series that I did read for my series read along sprints. I read The Infernal Devices by Cassandra Clare. So this is part of the Shadowhunters universe. Like, it's a Shadowhunters novel, and oh my gosh, I love this so much. If you join me for my series read along sprints, you know how much this series has affected me. Like, I really love this series so much. So the first book is Clockwork Angel. I don't really think I need to really say too much about this book, but we're just following like a group of shadow hunters in Victorian era London as they're fighting this very different kind of enemy than they're used to fighting. Like, shadow hunters, they fight demons, but the enemy that they have here is not quite a demon, but more machine-like. The way that this book was pitched to me is that this is one of the best fantasy books or YA fantasy books that has a proper love triangle, and I agree. Like, I wholeheartedly agree. I would lay down my life for Will, Tess, and Jem. And I do not make me choose. Do not make me choose which couple should have been endgame, because I cannot choose. I gave Clockwork Angel 4.25 stars. It was a really strong start to the series. The ending is a bit of a cliffhanger, but I like how I got to learn more about the Shadowhunters universe and how everything started, because that is set in early 2000s while this is in Victorian era. So you will still learn a lot about the Shadowhunters way of life by just reading this book, and I really enjoyed the writing style. I did not like the Mortal Instruments. It felt like it was, it needed a little bit more editing. But Cassandra Clare really improved her writing style in this book, and I really loved it. Like, I was dog-earing pages. I was really enjoying how everything was written. And then, obviously, the next book is Clockwork Prince. I gave this one 4.75 stars. And this one is heartbreak. Honestly, I'm remembering the stuff that I read and my heart is breaking already. But yeah, really enjoyed this one as well. This just, expand the story further, and there's more twists and turns in this one. And finally, I have the finale, Clockwork Princess, and I gave this one 5 stars. As you can see, I even dog-eared it because I didn't have my tabs on hand, and I just wanted to make sure that I remember where my favorite lines, aka the lines that broke me, are. But yeah, chapter 11 is heartbreak. But yeah, really enjoyed this one. It was a really good ending. It left me kind of sad because I wanted more stories with Will, Tess, and Jem in it. Yeah, I am definitely excited to continue reading into more Shadowhunters books because of this one. This definitely made me a fan. Glad that I read it, and I'm still heartbroken. But anyway, that is it. That is the last set of books that I read for the months of November and December. I know that this is quite late in a way, but I hope that you still enjoyed listening to me yap about the books. In the next video, I'm gonna talk about my favorites from the entire year, as well as some of the books that I didn't quite like. And I want to go through my stats, not just for book stats, but I was also inspired by Gavin from Gavin Reads It All to do like channel stats, which I think would be fun to revisit in a year's time as well. That's it for today's video. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Happy New Year to everyone, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.